Court Reporter with Stovall and Associates.
Hello and welcome to Court Reporter with Stovall and Associates. I'm here with Rick Marshall, running for sheriff for Nye County. Made it through the primaries, now
Yes.
down to the general election and two candidates. So almost there.
Almost there.
So been a bumpy road, good road. You excited about it?
You know, I am excited about it. It has been a bumpy road. I believe in fair campaign practices. I know based on historical data that Nye County has a colorful road.
Yes, it does.
When
It has
it
for
comes
many
to
years.
elections. But I was not prepared for the viciousness, for the lies, for the attacks, for the things that occurred. I like to think that I adapt well to situations, but it's been a wonderful campaign for the most part in meeting people from Duckwater to Pahrump and all points in between, and the support that I've received and the encouragement to not give up and just keep going. It's been fantastic. And my wife, of course, has been a rock.
Right. Well, I'm sorry to hear there's been a bumpy road, because I know you have been in this community for years and have done a ton for this community. And I know between the T-ball and the soccer and some of the different things you've done in our community, I just personally want to say thank you, because I mean, I got two little boys that are raised here, and I know you do a lot, and I do appreciate that. I know today you want to talk a little bit about the reserve program.
Yes. Nye County Sheriff's Office has a reserve program. It started in the 70s. And what the reserve program means is that you come in and you volunteer your time. We currently have reserve deputy sheriffs in all facets of the sheriff's office. We have a reserve detective. He probably puts in 24 to 32 hours a week. He's retired Las Vegas Metro officer. He brings a wealth of knowledge to the community of Pahrump, and we're very lucky to have him. We have reserve officers working patrol. We have reserve officers working in the jail. And a reserve officer performs the same duties as a full-time peace officer. They just don't get paid for it. A lot of them do it because they want to give back to the community. A lot of them do it in the hopes that it's going to lead to a full-time job. A lot of them start out because they want to see if they're compatible with law enforcement and if law enforcement's compatible with them before they put an investment into it, quit their job, and make this their sole moneymaker. So, you know, it's been around for a long time. Nevada has regulated the reserve program since 1982. They have mandated that people go through law enforcement academies, and over the years they've refined it. Most of the regulations came out in the early 80s and in the 87s. You're well aware of lawsuits and liability,
right,
for those sort of things. You know, you cannot have somebody who gets sworn in, give them a badge and gun, and say, go out and enforce the law. That's a lawsuit waiting to happen. And Nye County in the early 70s did just that thing. They handed out badges, they handed out guns, and they said, go out and enforce the law. And people went out and they tried to do the right things at times, but sometimes that didn't happen that way if you don't have the proper training or the proper supervision for it. Most reserve officers put in about 24 hours a month. Now, we get a lot of people that will come from different states or different organizations, and they'll claim to be a reserve for 20 years in Virginia. We look into it, and they were affiliated with a law enforcement agency for 20 years, but it doesn't mean they have 20 years experience, and I'll explain that to you. In the government world, and I'm assuming in the private world as well, a work week is generally 40 hours. So you multiply 40 times 52 and you get 2,080 hours is the equivalency of a full-time employee. So if you work as a reserve and you work 24 hours a month, you multiply 24 times 12 and you come up with 288 hours.
Okay.
So that's how many hours you would actually put in, well short of the 2,080 hours that's required for 1 year service. So if you did 24 hours a month, which comes to 288 hours a year, it would take you 7 years and 2 months to equal 1 year of full-time service. So we get a lot of people that say, I have 20 years experience, but when we
Right.
look into it, they don't have 20 years. They have 288 hours times however many years they
they've
have.
been. Absolutely.
So, and that's really important because the Nevada Peace Officers training, they're the Peace Officer Standards and Training that oversee the certifications in Nevada. Reserve officers are able to get certification above the basic level. When you graduate an academy, you get a basic certificate. Then you can go on to get an intermediate, an advanced, a supervisory, a management, and an executive. Executive is the highest you can get.
Okay.
I happen to have an executive post. But it takes a combination of hours and years. So let's say that Michael Selbach was a police officer in California, but he was a reserve for 20 years. And he comes over here and says, I was a reserve for 20 years. We look into it and find out that he worked 30 hours a month, 360 hours per year.
Right.
So we would take that, and if you did 360 hours a year, it takes about 5 years and 7 months to equal 1 year. So in reality, you would have 4 years total if you did 20 years over there, just under 4 years. So you would not be eligible for the intermediate or the advanced certificate here because Nevada Post goes by the actual hours worked. And if you have 360 hours in 1 year, but you did that for 20 years, you don't have 20 years of law enforcement experience.
Absolutely.
So that's important. So Nevada's been regulating the reserves since about 1982. Nye County, go ahead.
The reserves is a little bit different than the auxiliary, correct?
Correct. The auxiliary are retired people who do not have the peace officer powers. They have limited peace officer powers. They can write citations, things like that. They can also make citizens arrests. Now, anybody can make a citizen arrest. You could be, well, let's take the Nugget. The Nugget employs security guards. Those security guards have powers of arrest at their business because they're like a private citizen.
Right.
They can place somebody under arrest. At your business, you have the power to arrest somebody for trespassing or committing some other infraction of the law in your presence.
Gotcha.
So a security guard has that same authority. They don't have peace officer powers, quote, but they have the powers of arrest. So we have to be careful when somebody says, well, you know, I had peace officer powers.
Not to cut you off here, Rick, but we need to take a quick commercial break, and when we'll be right back to finish that up.
We'll do that.
Court reporter with Stovall and Associates.